Good morning, everybody, or yes, I think it's still morning, isn't it? I'm Ambassador Michael Pelletier. I am the Executive Director of the Institute for Global Engagement here at the University of Houston, and I want to thank everybody for coming. This is actually the third event that we've done focused on translation. Last year, on the same day, on September 30th, we celebrated International Translation Day, and I feel particularly strongly that the multilingualism and the ability to translate between languages and cultures is really a secret superpower that we have here at the University of Houston. Whenever I have the great opportunity to go and speak to a class, I'll ask how many people here speak more than one language at home. And invariably, about 99% of the students in the class raise their hand. That is something that I think people don't realize what a rare treat, what a rare skill, what a rare trump card that is that you have in your back pocket. And it's something that equally across the board, University of Houston has the academic backing to really strengthen. We have so many different parts of the University of Houston that are focused on translation, international interpretation, multilingualism, multiculturalism. And I think that really strengthens then our students' inborn, innate, at-home advantage and our own academic advantages as well. And so last year we said there are so many of us working across campus on translation and on multilingualism. We wanted to do something for International Translation Day. And so we did a program, I have it here somewhere. We did a program called Translation Equals Understanding, Bridging Cultures and Building Connections. And then that was so popular and such a hit, and I think so many people were interested, that in the spring, in April, we did a second event called Translating Wisdom, Classical Traditions from Around the World. And we looked at a very academic but really fascinating topic of how some of the more classical languages work into knowledge that we have today and how they spread knowledge. And we had some wonderful exhibits from the library, from the rare collections in the library here at the MD Anderson Library at University of Houston. And so this year, again, it is International Translation Day today. That is a day that is recognized by the UN and by the International Federation of Translators, where every year on September 30th, they recognize translation as a profession. And so this year, our program is also focused very much on multilingualism as a professional aid, as something that can really advance you in your profession. We have a number of different panels that will speak to you today about multilingualism and interpretation and translation as a career, and then we'll look at it specifically through the lens of academics, of government work, and translation in and of itself as a career. And interspersed throughout the panels, we look forward to having some students share their stories with us about how being multilingual has affected and given their life path and given them opportunities as well. And I'm hoping to share in the panel I'm part of on government work some of the stories about how multilingualism and translation both helped and hurt me in my career as well. So to get started, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Dr. Maggie Mahoney, who's going to introduce the first panel on looking at sort of an overview of translation and multilingualism in a professional career.
Good morning. So I'd like to bring up to the stage our two panelists for this first panel. We have Priyanka Raut, our Associate Director for University Career Services here at the University of Houston, and Neri, I forgot your last name. Mazarios. Neri Mazarios from Masterword. And so if y'all would like to come on up, I'm going to sit down with y'all, and we're going to have a quick conversation about this. So Priyanka and Neri, I'd love if y'all could introduce yourselves a little bit before we get started with the conversation and what kind of org you're representing.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Priyanka Raut, and I serve as the Associate Director for University Career Services. I'm happy to be here to share my perspective from the career counseling world, how you can use these skills in your job search and in your career planning process, and also share some insights from me being an international student, growing up learning 5 languages, and how it helped me broaden my skill set to to be a better person and a professional.
Wonderful, thank you. Neri?
Awesome. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Neri Masariegos, and I am the Head of Talent Acquisition at Masterword. We are a Houston-based language services provider with a very unique connection to the University of Houston, which I will share with you all a little later. I'm also a certified healthcare interpreter, Spanish to English, and I have been with Masterword for under 9 years. And I am excited to be sharing with you all some of the great opportunities that are out there for those of you who may be multilingual, bilingual. There is a plethora of opportunities for you, not besides yours just interpreting or translating.
Wonderful. And then let's talk to all of you in the audience real quick. So with a raise of hands, how many of you are multilingual? Bonjour, buenos dias, hi y'all. I love this. This is a great representation of why we're having this conversation today. So students, what I'm wanting you to get out of today is to listen to why your multilingualism really matters. All of your languages that you speak. And so Priyanka, I'd love to start with you on why is being multilingual or speaking another language other than English actually a superpower for students as they go throughout their academic career and go on to graduate and enter the global workforce?
Absolutely. So I'll share from the careers perspective and then also from soft skill development perspective. As careers, when you search for jobs, you'll see so many jobs require bilingual people who speak more than one language. That's because you are adding value to that organization because you can help them connect with a wider clientele. Right? You can help them get into markets, maybe global, national, and international, where it would be hard for them to reach because they do not speak the local language or because they have not communicated with someone from a different culture. So your ability to speak that language is very, very important when it comes to your career. As far as your self-development is concerned, when you speak more than one language or when you're studying a language, it helps you to enhance your communication skills because you're listening, you're paying attention, which is a rare skill these days. People just keep moving, nobody wants to read things. So you do bring in that enhanced communication skill. You also bring that awareness and openness to accept another culture and be willing to learn something new. So again, that ability to embrace another culture. I would also say that learning language can also help you kind of network more because now your circle of networking, whether with employers or people, has increased beyond people who speak only English. And with Houston being the hub of oil and gas, we have people from all over the world who live and work here. And so if at any point you want to consider working abroad or in another country, this is your opportunity. If you are an international student and you have limitations of working here in the US, consider going to another country for which you speak the language and starting up your career over there and then coming back. So these are just some examples.
I love that. Priyanka, I've had a lot of students tell me that they don't raise their hand when I ask if they speak another language because they assume it's not Spanish, it's not Mandarin Chinese, it's not Arabic. So why does what is it?
Harari.
Harari. Why does Harari matter? I'm working with a student who speaks Harari right now. Yes, and so they didn't initially raise their hand, or students like that maybe don't initially raise their hands because speaking another language like that might not matter. So how does speaking a different language, how do we put that into our career search in a way that although Harari, for example, is not super used in the careers, where do we put it? How do we use it? What do we do with it? And then how can University Career Services help us?
Absolutely. So
take notes, y'all.
So any language that you learn, it's very important, the first thing that you feel proud about it. No matter which language you speak, you need to own it and you need to feel proud about it because you have to advocate for yourself and you have to make that language known to other people if they don't speak it. And you might be surprised, there might be someone who is actually looking for someone who's speaking Harari,
Yes.
or Hindi, or Japanese, or German. So embrace that language that you're speaking, include it on your resume, create a separate section for languages. Also highlight it by including it in your objective. The top half of your resume, when you open your statement, your summary, include the language that you speak in that section. You could also, if you're applying for a job, let's say a translator job or an interpreter job, try to see what skills you have that are similar and include those language skills on your resume. So whether you have done an assignment, whether you've done a project, whether it was just at a local community event where you helped with interpretation or translation, do not underestimate the value of using those language skills in any life situation. So make sure that all that shows on your resume, because if you do not put it on your resume, nobody's going to know about it. If you do not talk about it, nobody is going to know about it. So I would say that I grew up speaking German and Japanese and Hindi and Marathi and English. I don't use half of those languages now, but they're still on my resume because I put in a lot of my time and effort into learning them. So at some point, if somebody sees that on my resume and thinks I might be of some help, it's an opportunity for me to practice that language. So those are, I would say, some ways to incorporate language on your resume.
I love that. And so we'll come back to you in a minute, Priyanka, about what University Career Services can offer students. But Neri, I want to start with just why is language a superpower for working in the global workforce?
Well, I think it's a great question, and I'm going to piggyback off of something Priyanka said. Actually, she used the word connection. So it's actually in our slogan, we connect people across language and culture. So I want you to also understand that being multilingual and bilingual, obviously it's great for communication, we represent, our clients are in the medical center, city of Houston, state of Texas, so these are very important meetings going on. But we're also cultural brokers. So we don't just share the language. There are a lot of cultural nuances that only someone who's well-versed in both the language and the culture can share, right? So for example, I'll give you a quick example. When handing over a business card in certain languages, the appropriate respectful thing is to give it with two hands. And as we receive it, we respectfully and carefully read every line in the card. We don't just put it in our pocket, right? That is being culturally aware, sensitive, and respectful. These are the kind of things that our linguists bring to the table every day. It's a superpower.
I know, it really is. So Neri's from Masterword, so would you give us a brief history of the organization?
Yeah. So Masterword, we are in our 31st year, and Masterword was founded 31 years ago, 1993, right here at the University of Houston. So behind me, you'll see our founder, our CEO and president, Mila Golovin. She was actually part of the very first graduating class at the Wolf Center for Entrepreneurship. And I'm going to share the story real quick because this is very pertinent. Mila had one credit remaining in order to graduate from the University of Houston. And it was just enough for an elective. So she stumbled across, she says, a class that she didn't know what the word entrepreneurship meant. And so she just took it because it fit her schedule. Well, it really did change the course of both her life, but also the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, because she went on to found Masterword. And essentially it was a homework assignment. So all the students out there, don't frown upon any homework assignments because you don't know where it can lead. But essentially her job at the Wolf Center was to come up with a business plan for a creative new business idea. And she is a native Russian speaker. So she figured what better way of using what I know, my culture, my language, to create a business plan for providing language services. And upon submitting, part of the homework was actually submitting it to a real company. To her surprise, they accepted her proposal and hired her. That was not part of the homework assignment. Well, she will tell you that 31 years later, she's still working on her homework assignment.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. So Neri, can you talk about careers in translation and what they look like at Masterworld or in that kind of sphere of employment?
Absolutely. So There are many, but let's start with the most obvious. So for those of you who may not know, there is a difference between written word translation, right, and interpretations. A lot of times you hear, oh, he's a translator, she's a translator. Well, translation is written word. Interpretation is spoken, so there is a clear distinction. But there is a lot of room for growth. So behind me is a chart that will show you what we expect gross volume in dollars of what the language services industry is today and what we expect it to go. So $72 billion a year is the value of the language services industry, which all of you can become a part of. And it goes way beyond just interpreting and translating. In the next slide, actually, I can share with you some of the careers. So I figured we would give you guys a graphic where you can actually visualize or attempt to visualize the different pathways there are to using your language skills.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. At Masterword, I started as a recruiter. Later, I became a certified healthcare interpreter. Every day I get to work with sales professionals, professional translators, desktop publishers, editors, proofreaders. We have an amazing sales team. We have accountants. There are so many opportunities within the industry. And the higher you go up, the more you can see that there are opportunities for everyone across different sectors or fields, what have you.
Yeah, I definitely know I use multiple languages in my work, and I love being able to do that. Can you answer, because we're going to continue on for time, and then I'll
Sure.
what is, I guess, a recommendation for students who speak other languages, but they're not sure how it might apply to their career field that they're looking at?
I can tell you that you should always, is exactly what Priyanka said, mention your language in your resume. Many a times I'll look at a resume and I don't see a language on there. So for what I need, I always want to see what languages you speak, because, for example, this City of Houston, we speak over 180 languages officially. Unofficially, it's well over 300 because many dialects are not included in that count. So I can tell you that there is a need. For me specifically, because we work with so many different sectors, from government, private sector, that I can certainly use language skills, but it is really important that you take pride, exactly what Priyanka said. Take pride in your language, use it, develop it, and share it, right? Share it, make sure that it's in your resume, it's in your LinkedIn profile, because there are people like me, I promise you, that are constantly on LinkedIn looking for unique language skills.
I love that. And I think a lot of our professors would tell students here today that showing that you can speak another language shows that you have the ability to learn and that you have that propensity to be open-minded to that. Priyanka, I'm going to ask you one last question and then we'll wrap up. How can students get help to do all of this? What is University Career Services here for?
Absolutely. So if you are not sure how to include those skills on your resume, schedule an appointment with University Career Services. When you log into your Access UH, you will be able to see a Cougar Pathway symbol. Click on that to schedule your appointment, meet one-on-one with a career counselor. If you're not able to schedule an appointment, we also have virtual drop-in hours today from 1 to 3 p.m. and then Tuesdays and Thursdays in person in our office from 1 to 3 p.m. How many of you know where Career Services is? Thank you, Dean Tart. Okay, so we are located in a small building right across from E-Cullen. It's called Student Service Center 1, and we're on the first floor. CAPS used to be on the second floor of that building. So please come to our office, use our services. You do pay for these services through your student fees. So please do not wait till you graduate and then pay someone hundreds of dollars to do the same thing that we can do for you right now. So please come to our office. We also have workshops. I have a table back there. We're going to do a presentation on global resumes, so how to include your study abroad experience, your language skills on your resume. That's going to be on October 4th. So come engage with our office. We have career fairs. We have a big career fair happening on October 14th, I believe. So don't think that I don't have anything. Come to the fair, talk to the recruiter. translators. If you do not talk, you will not know what's out there. So don't be afraid. Start engaging with our services. We can also help you with your resume, your cover letter. If you want to prepare for an interview, we can do mock interviews as well.
Well, thank you so much, Priyanka and Neri. This was very helpful. Neri and Masterword have a table in the back with their information and all of the information to see what it might take to be an interpreter or a translator. And Priyanka has a table for career services. Again, I'll plug that global resume workshop because I'll be co-leading that this Friday at noon virtually. So you can just log in from your phone. And just thank you all so much for this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So our Voices of Success competition, I put a call out for students to share their stories in a 1 to 2 minute, 1 to 2 minutes, that's it, competition to share how being multilingual or bilingual has affected and impacted their personal, professional, academic life. Which, by the way, is Kushal here yet?
Yes.
Okay, great. You're not first, you're second. So take a sec. You'll be after Hannah, so I'm going to go ahead and invite Hannah up to the podium, and she'll get to say her speech. And these speeches are being judged by our panel of 3 judges. So we have Miss Ann Dayton, Dr. Ann Dayton from the Provost's office. We have Dr. Luis Alcocer from University Partnerships, and we have Allison Carruthers from Learning Abroad. All right, Hannah, if you want to come on up.
My name is Hannah. Bonjour tout le monde. Je m'appelle Anna. 안녕하세요 여러분. 제 이름은 하나라고 합니다. Assalamu alaikum. Anna ismi Hannah. And I'll just share my story with you. I first moved to America from France at 10 years old. At that point, I did not speak the slightest bit of English. But having grown up in a household where French, Arabic, and English were spoken, I absorbed the language like a sponge the first 2 years living in America. And in that time, I realized that, unlike other countries, America is a diverse one that is full of opportunities and alternatives. You will always find a shoe that fits, but that is not the case for everyone. What if you're expected to be someone you don't necessarily want to become just because you were given the opportunity to? My father had high expectations and a PhD in physics. How could one ever top that? I'd have to go to medical school, but what if that wasn't what I was meant to be? After all these years of having dedicated myself to the field of medicine just for a pat in the back, I have come to a conclusion that would be hard to admit to anyone. As much as I'd want to be, I am just not meant for this. It's a hard pill to swallow, but once you do concede to what seems as failure, only then can you finally succeed. 6 years ago, I began the amazing journey of learning the Korean language, and as I started learning it, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with it. I just knew I enjoyed it. And that's when the opportunities at the University of Houston came at the perfect time. It was a serendipity of some sort. I started my college career in 2021 with a major in honors biomedical sciences and a dream of one day becoming a doctor, and have now ended up with a dual degree in world cultures and literatures with a focus in global modernity, with the dream of doing comparative cultural studies in graduate schools. In my case, being multilingual granted me the opportunity to find what fits me best and what I could excel at. I am now a Korean tutor at UH. I am working on an upcoming thesis with my Korean professor, Professor Choi, on comparative linguistics, and I am even working on an application for a study abroad in Seoul, South Korea. Without having been multilingual, I wouldn't even have began imagining going to South Korea to study there, and let alone having 2 separate degrees. And although I might not be on a path that my father would have wanted, I have found my own, and that's what success is to me. Thank you. Merci.
Wonderful. This is Kushal Roy, and he is a biochemistry major, and you're a junior?
I'm a grad student.
Oh, grad student, there we go. All
All right,
right.
I can introduce that myself.
All right, 2 minutes, I'm timing.
All right, so I have 2 minutes. All right, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Namaste, everyone. And it's like, my name is Kushal Raj Roy, and I'm a grad student with a passion of, learning multiple languages. And being grown up in a very small city called Sylhet, it is a northeastern Himalayan side. We had only single language, which is almost dying. So I born in a country where my language was pretty dominated, and so I have to learn 2 new languages. So first I learned the language called Bengali, and so prominent language in Bangladesh and Indian subcontinent. Then I went back to India for learning my higher education for my bachelor and my master's. So there I have learned Hindi, Marathi, Assamese, and also I become like, English is not my native language, so I have to learn English also. What the conflict I really has been through at UH, at the beginning of my time at UH, I realized that speaking multilingual, it didn't just mean speaking different languages. It also meant navigating different cultures, perspective, and ways of thinking. So I really struggled to cope up with this diverse culture and also to actually having communications and stuff. But over time, I saw how this multilingual skills have gave me that unique edge. Whatever it is, collaborating with these global research projects and building intercultural relationships with people, and also honing my leadership skills with my different diverse teams. So I learned this to harness my languages as a tool to both communications and empathy, and also it helped me to become globally, get connected with the people from different diverse groups. In a short story, I have been teaching assistant for this UH, the Department of Biochemistry, for a long time. So I have a student I met with her. She was like 54 years old and who has a very urge to learn, go to for med school. I don't know how much time I have still there. So she was really struggling with English for a long time, and so I was the TAing for there. And so there is one particular topic is called this thermodynamics, and she was really interested to learn that, and she was really struggling in English. So she said, I was asking, do you want me to introduce you in your native language? And I literally helped. I taught her in her native language, and I'm really happy to announce that she is now in the med school. She really has done a tremendous job. She learned it properly. So yeah, I think this today I see that the being multilingual is a key factor in my success, driving my academic growth and preparing me for the globally connected culture. Thank you so much.
Now we're going to hear from our second panel, Translation in Academics and Research, moderated by Dr. Guillermo Los Reyes from the Department of Hispanic Studies.
Thank you everyone for coming. As they said, Guillermo de los Reyes. I'm a associate professor in the Hispanic Studies Department, where I serve as a department chair. And I'm joined today by colleagues from the Hispanic Studies Department and the Modern and Classical Languages Department, that are the two departments on campus that offer, the only departments that offer a multilingual courses and degrees. So please come to talk to us after if you want to do a major or minor in many of the languages that we offer in these two departments. But I won't be talking today. They will be the ones doing the talking, even though I love talking. And first, I'll introduce them, and then I will ask a couple of questions. First, to my right, Dr. Julio Cesar Lopez Otero, who is an assistant professor in the Hispanic Studies Department, where he also serves as the director of the Spanish Heritage Language Program. He received his PhD in bilingualism and second language acquisition from Broadcast University, MA in Hispanic Linguistics for Purdue University, and a BA in Translation and Interpretation from the Universidad Pablo de Olavide in Sevilla, España. His research focuses on the acquisition and maintenance of Spanish grammar among different types of bilinguals. His work has been published in journals such as Languages, International Journal of Bilingualism, Heritage Language Journal, Second Language Research, among others, and his research discusses Spanish, Portuguese, and English, and many other languages. To my left is my colleague, Dr. Mohan Ambikaipakar, who is the director of the Class Honors Program and also associate professor in the World Cultures and Literatures Program in the Modern Classical Languages Department. He's the author of Political Blackness in Multiracial Britain by the University of Pennsylvania Press, a very good university. I went there, actually. He, he has also published in journals such as Ethnic and Racial Studies, Postcolonial Studies, Communications, among others. His research and teaching is comprised of three strands, the UK, the US, and Malaysia, and engages comparative research in theorizing connections between liberal democratic political systems and the interlocking production of differential forms of racism. Welcome, colleagues, and the conversation today will be about how does multilingualism, multiculturalism influence the research. And I will ask Dr. Lopez Otero how multilingualism is relevant to your research or teaching.
Of course. Bilingualism, multilingualism is everything I do in terms of research. And I want to say it's because I grew up bilingual. I was born and raised in Spain to a Brazilian mother and Spanish father. And like many bilinguals in the US who grow up in a bilingual household, their minority, their heritage language is usually frowned upon by society. Usually we are ashamed to even say that we are native speakers of said language, because when we go back to our second countries, family countries, sometimes our cousins, our neighbors, like this whole story of the Yo no sabo kid, or they may notice you have a foreign accent. So yeah, but when we just get rid of all this mess around bilingualism, we know that one bilingual is not two monolinguals in one, that bilingualism takes many different shapes, and that is something that I learned throughout my studies and that motivated me to keep studying bilingualism, multilingualism, and now Spanish in the US, and how Spanish in the US changes depending on how spoken it is, how frequently it is spoken in the families or not, and that all forms of Spanish are valid, which is something that even we Spanish speakers in the US sometimes have difficulties understanding, and not shaming other speakers. So that is something that is crucial in my role as the director of the Spanish Heritage Language Program, and we encourage all the students, regardless of how proficient you may be in Spanish, just come talk to us. There are many ways that you can place into a level or another, and clearly our courses are tailored for you guys. We focus on what you need as opposed to, second language courses, which clearly have a different approach to language learning. So yeah, we are the only two departments that offer foreign language, if you want to say that Spanish is a foreign language. We also, we offer courses that are tailored to the Hispanic Spanish-speaking community here in Houston. And after that, we also offer courses in translation and minors in translation, related to what the previous panel was discussing. So yeah, plenty of opportunities, to start your careers in bilingualism, multilingualism, translation, interpretation here at the University of Houston with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lopez Otero. Dr. Ambike Packer, the same question, and we have a different perspective from his research. So could you please illuminate us?
Thank you. I do want to make a plug for my program. So Hannah Guerrero, who you just heard, is a major in the World Cultures and Literature program in studies in global modernity, and it is a good example of a different kind of angle to the question of the relevance of language, in our world. Of course, acquiring language, having multilingual abilities have been shown to be incredible assets in careers. But the kinds of things that I study are not very nice. They tend to be the more conflict-ridden questions around language, race, and nationhood. And these are very vexed questions that are requiring a lot of people to be engaged in order to have sort of like solutions that can be better than the ones that we have today. So I don't know if people have heard of this term language death, But most scholars and experts agree that within our lifetime, we will probably see the loss about half the languages that are spoken in the world today. We have about roughly 7,000, and about half of them will disappear, right? And there are multiple reasons why these languages disappear, and the cost of the disappearance is incalculable in many different regards, especially in terms of knowledge and epistemology, because every language has a system by which it makes sense of the world, and so we lose access to that system of knowledge, right? When we lose it, unfortunately, we have politics around the question of nationhood and nation building that is quite hostile to the preservation and speaking of languages. So in my context, I'm an ethnic minority from the country of Malaysia. Starting in the colonial period, that with colonial British policies, there was very active push and pull factors to try to get people to become anglicized, right, on the one hand. And then in the post-colonial period, after Malaysia becomes independent, then a majoritarian language, Malay, was selected to be the official language. And the idea of a nation, unfortunately, is still predicated on what we call a Westphalian model, which is a kind of a European, Germanic heritage model that has been, in a sense, replicated the world over, and is part of our global system of nation states today, presupposes that peoplehood is defined by one language, one race, one nation. And nation states are very aggressively trying to make themselves cohere as this one language, one people, one race. And we can obviously see the echoes of those kinds of politics even here in the United States, and why there's antagonisms against languages, right? Above and against the kinds of benefits we accrue by having the epistemologies and knowledge systems that come to us as a legacy or as a benefit of having multiple language systems, in our ecology, as it were.
Thank you. That's actually a very important point. I personally grew up in Mexico, south of the border, where during the 80s and 90s, all the languages, the native languages, Maya, many of Maya Sichek, Tzotzil, they were repressed. I'm very proud of Spanish, right? When in Spain, there are like 5 different official languages, and here in the US, Spanish becomes a minority language, and I always say that I speak many dialects of Spanish, because talking about multiculturalism, the importance, the different words and the different approaches, and one question that probably the students might ask is, what ways does being multilingual, multicultural contributes to professional, or in this case, academic success?
So I work with people, so I always think of people when it comes to careers and opportunities. So for example, for us in Spanish, we have collaborations with the Department of Education, careers, any field in bilingual education, which is on the rise, not only in Texas, but in the country overall. Also to serve people with communication disorders, we can help our bilingual community, and what other collaboration do? All the minors that we offer. Yeah, we offer minors in Spanish for the professions, which include legal Spanish, medical Spanish. So basically, in every career in which a student would eventually interact with people. People are diverse, and in Houston, in Texas, people are diverse, particularly when it comes to speaking Spanish. So yeah, speaking Spanish can definitely add a differential when it comes to securing a job.
What about? I mean, what do you think why is important to understand, especially relevant to your research, to be aware of the impact of languages, or bilingualism, or monolingualism in some cases, right? Why is that important?
Yeah, I'm going back to perhaps one way I can illustrate is the example of Mexico and the indigenous languages. So I I will kind of toot my horn over here, but the elementary school textbooks in Celtal, which is an indigenous language from the Chiapas region of Mexico, was written on my dining table. And I'm very proud of that because I was part of a movement that, Enlace Civil, that was in support of the Zapatista rebellions in Mexico. And so when I was at the University of Texas, Austin, as a graduate student, we actually hosted a number of native speakers, educators, and also linguists who were in solidarity to them to write the first grammar of Celtal and to produce the first elementary textbooks that will actually be used in one of the haciendas that were appropriated in the revolution and turned over to be a elementary school building. So, one family had one hacienda. I don't know if you know like how these things were divided, but the big families in Chiapas would demarcate land like from this mountaintop to that mountaintop. That was my family's, that mountaintop to that mountaintop, and on top of each mountaintop there was a hacienda. Well, the rebels controlled about 1/3 of Chiapas. And so the hacienda that was in their control became a school. So it's an amazing when you look at all of these big mansions, what they could become if there was a revolution. Again, lots of universities and classes. But, and a lot more people could use these buildings, right? But, it has been an incredible, I think, we can call it a question of language justice, but I think we also can think about it in terms of a universal benefit. I think the sustaining of Celtal is going to be something that enriches, common humanity. I had a colleague, anthropology colleague, who went to my home country of Malaysia to document the ways in which certain indigenous rainforest tribes and their languages, classified and thought about plants, right? So that language had an epistemology about botany that was not found in Arabic or Latin or any other language. And as an anthropologist, it was very important for him to be able to document that. So I think that when it's not just a partisanal thing or an ethnic thing, I think when we think of languages as being repositories of knowledge that are beneficial to human beings at large, then supporting Celtal is a common mission.
Indeed, thank you. We need to wrap this up because of time. There are other panels, but as you know, please come to talk to us about our majors and minors. There are like faculty, also there are students here that you can ask about what we do in the Hispanic Studies Department and the Mother Language Departments about the multilingual advantage. Thank you very much. Thank you to my colleagues, and join me too. Thank you.
All right, we're going to bring up our next speaker, student contestant for Voices of Success. So please help me in welcoming Maggie No, and she is an entrepreneurship major graduating in 2028.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Maggie, and before I start, I want to ask a question to everybody. What does family mean to you? Because to me, family means my parents, my siblings, and the Vietnamese Houston community. The reason I bring this up is because when I was in middle school, I had reoccurring thoughts of how I was going to keep in touch with my culture and my heritage because I grew up here. My mom had 9 siblings, and my dad's extended family reached about 30 people, and they all live in Vietnam. So I don't have any family here. However, when I expressed those feelings to my parents, they signed me up for a Vietnamese language school, where I was able to learn Vietnamese language and culture. So I figured pretty early in my life that that worry was no more. And that experience was extremely valuable to me, not only because I got to experience my heritage, but because I was able to give back to my community by becoming a teacher. I've taught there for 3 years so far. I taught 2nd graders, 3rd graders, and this year I teach 7th graders. So not only was I able to interact with the really cute kids, I was also able to meet like-minded people as well. And from those experiences as a multilingual, I was able to bring those experiences here at UH. The University of Houston has a Vietnamese Student Association, and I joined there, and I really liked the fact that I was also able to connect with other Vietnamese Houstonians. And I also met some international Vietnamese students as well, which I thought was extremely cool. And I want to study abroad in Vietnam as well, not only to advance my academic and professional life, but to also see the life that my parents grew up in, or the life I could have had with my cousins and my other aunts and uncles. So not only has being multilingual enhanced my experiences, but I was also able to implement that with the Houston community. So not only do I have a Gia Đình, which means family, in Vietnam, but I also have a Gia Đình with the Houston community. And before I end my speech, I want to show off the Vietnamese dress I'm wearing, called the Ao Dai, and my auntie handmade it for me.
And our next competitor is Edgar Castillo. Edgar, come on up. And Edgar is a UH medical student at the College of Medicine, and he'll be graduating in May of 2027.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. As was mentioned, I'm Edgar. I'm a medical student just across the bayou at the College of Medicine. And, you know, in medicine, the most important people are patients, right? And communication is arguably the most important thing when talking about medications, talking about surgeries, talking about health outcomes in general. And I want to bring a story up about a patient I had. His name was Mario, who wasn't, but, you know, patient confidentiality. Mario came in, was checked in by our MA, came in into the room, and I was with my preceptor at the time. We both go into the room, and overall, Mario is pretty reserved, pretty quiet, timid, just every question that was asked of him, he had very short, straight to the point responses of yes, no, you know, very, very simple. And I noticed he had a bit of an accent. And then I just, you know, shot in the dark, was like, "Hey, Mario, habla español?" To which he immediately lightened up. His demeanor completely changed. So what was once a patient, just simple saying yes or no answers and whatever English he can get by, he now was telling me about his story, about how he grew up in Mexico, about his health conditions that he was having, problems, and a lot of information that we uncovered that probably wouldn't have been uncovered had I not been there in the room with him. So Mario left much, much more joyful than he arrived. New medications, new understanding of what those medications were doing for him and for his health. And luckily, his condition wasn't all that grave. It was more chronic condition management. But nonetheless, I'm sure you can see the value in this in somebody dealing with, say, cancer, unfortunately, or someone having to go in very invasive surgery, that to really communicate the costs and benefits of the healthcare that they are receiving. So that's part of the beauty of being bilingual, especially here in Houston, where 30% of households speak Spanish, and it's probably only going to be growing within the coming years. So as a medical student, I've started part of the Multilingual, which is our medical Spanish club at the College of Medicine, where we bring Spanish opportunities, of course, and I've been speaking Spanish in my preceptors, and I've gone to Honduras as well to do medical support over there. Thank you.
All right, our next panel, we're going to be joined by our diplomat in residence, excuse me, Daniel Stewart, and he'll talk about what that means, and our executive director, Michael Pelletier, and Dr. Ben Rader from the Office of Undergraduate Research and Major Awards.
Thank you all very much. Very, very briefly, let me just welcome my former colleague when I was with the State Department, Daniel Stewart, who is our diplomat in residence in Texas. And what that means, and I'll let him speak more to it, but what it means is he gets to take all of the amazing experiences he's had as a U.S. diplomat around the world and share that with potential U.S. diplomats all across Texas and encourage them to see the incredible number and variety of opportunities there are to live internationally and represent the United States. And we are honored to have him here in Houston at UH with us. And after I ask him to say a few words about that, I will hand it over to my current colleague, Dr. Ben Rader, who is the Executive Director of the Office of Undergraduate Research and Major Awards here at the University of Houston, who helps our students connect with fellowships and scholarships and opportunities that put them on that international path. And most importantly, because to be international, you have to be rooted. The best thing about Ben is he is from the great state of Maine, as am I. So let me, Daniel, ask you to get us started.
Thank you very much. It's always intimidating to have to sit next to Ambassador Pelletier to speak a little bit, because he reflects somebody who's reached the highest levels of what I do at the U.S. Department of State. And it's also very exciting to be in a room full of students and people representing the diversity of culture, of language that is both Texas, that is Houston, but most importantly, that is the United States of America. And that's what I do. That is what I've done for my entire adult life as a member of the U.S. Foreign Service. I joined the Foreign Service at the age of 25, and for the past 24 years, I have been representing my country to the rest of the world. You are represented by an organization that only has 8,000 members, which is actually, when you think about it, relatively small. There are 800,000 members of the armed services, some 800,000 civilians in the Department of Defense. There's 1.4 million active lawyers in the United States. But when you think about the career of people that are spending their lives and careers living and working around the world, representing the United States, engaging with other governments and people and cultures, and trying to build bridges to break down barriers, to solve problems, there's about 8,000 of us, and we're called Foreign Service officers or diplomats. And so, as the ambassador mentioned, I have lived and worked in 6 different countries on 5 different continents over the course of my career. Mali in West Africa, Pretoria, South Africa, Brussels, Belgium, Recife, Brazil, Baghdad, Iraq, and Ottawa, Canada, very exotic. But the point is, in none of those places could I have done my work without the ability to communicate. Diplomats are by definition, we have to be multilingual. Now, the strange thing about the career is we don't have to be multilingual before we get the job. Many of us aren't. A good number of us are. And there are people just like you that speak 2, 3, 4 languages who bring those skills to a career that is described by Edward R. Murrow, the former head of the U.S. Agency for Information Agency, as trying to break down those last 3 feet of diplomacy, right? That personal connection between one person and another, trying to break down barriers of understanding. That takes actual communication, actual connection, people meeting one another and getting to learn about one another. And that only happens in language. So as diplomats, we are required to learn languages once we are in the career, and in fact, it's part of our job. We actually get the benefit of being paid to learn those languages before they send us to go out and do the job. But many of us come from international backgrounds, multilingual backgrounds, third national backgrounds, backgrounds of parents from different countries, first generation, and they bring all of that to that career of trying to figure out ways to work better with other countries and other people around the world. And so for all of the people here that are looking at careers of translation, looking at careers of communication, interpretation, at the end of the day, I'm not an interpreter. I'm not going to be the person that they send to the Olympics to make sure that you understand exactly what that person said at the event, but I am the person that they will send overseas to be able to engage with another country, to speak at a university, to engage with the press and the media, and to talk about those things, American culture, values, history, and our policies and why they're so important. And the truth is, it's a wide open career. Any American citizen between the ages of 20 and 59 can take a test and have that career. Regardless of what you studied, regardless of your level of education, you can apply to that career path and end up becoming a representative with the career path that leads to a job like Ambassador Pelletier had, which is to be Senate confirmed and named by the president of your country to go and represent your country to the rest of the world. So it's a great honor. It comes with its share of challenges, but more benefits than I would say challenges. And I'd be happy to answer any more questions about it. So.
Thank you. And so as I mentioned, Dr. Ben Rader in the Office of Undergraduate Research and Major Awards works tirelessly to help our UH students get opportunities through different internships and grants and scholarships to start themselves on a path towards perhaps the Foreign Service or other programs as well. And I'll let Ben talk about that.
Okay, thank you. I was never an actual ambassador like my esteemed colleague here, but I was a cultural ambassador at one point when I was a Fulbright student to Germany about, it pains me to say this, 15 years ago. And so I can speak kind of directly to the role of living in another country and relating to people, talking about the US, but also using different languages to make that happen. So I later went on to go do my dissertation in Germany, which I did pretty much entirely in German, which meant interviewing with people in German, reading German documents. I wrote it in English, but that opened up a whole different world for me while I was an academic, and I know that there was a previous panel here about research and the importance of language in that regard. And I'll just echo that point, that it really is, it allowed me to be a certain type of researcher and do work that even some Germans weren't actually super comfortable with, despite the fact that it was in their language. So beyond just the academic part of it, I will say that even knowing the language really helped me access a part of German society that I never would have gotten off the beaten path had I not chosen to learn the language. And that could mean just meeting Germans where they were. That could mean going out in the countryside, learning dialect as well. So when you live in a place long enough, you start to pick up all of the different nuances, including the provincial nature of certain languages. And that really made my experience a lot different and a lot more rewarding. But the fact that I started early, I think, in high school and then later took a language in college really helped me in that regard. And there's a lot of programs that I work with now in the Office of Undergraduate Research and Major Awards that can help students learn languages. And I think Stacy passed out some information about those. The Critical Language Scholarship, for example, is one of the programs that we work with, which is a State Department program, actually, where you can learn one of, now I think it's only 13 critical languages for a full summer and get it paid for. You can go live in the country for 2 months. You learn about a year's worth of that language in that time. You can actually get course credit for it as well towards your degree at UH. And you get preferred hiring status as well as part of your participation in this. And that's just a summer program. There's other programs as well, like the Boren Awards, which is on the other sheet that I passed out, which is for longer term study abroad, usually looking for people for 6 to 12 months, which I'll just say is somebody who's lived abroad for a long time, and I think there's probably other people in this room who would agree, the more time that you spend abroad, the more you will improve your language abilities, the more you will really get to know people, and the more you'll grow as a person. So even though Boren has some obligations to fulfill after you complete a Boren, it's a great way to learn language and be abroad. And then, of course, the program I mentioned, the Fulbright, it's not a language learning program, but you will inevitably be confronted with people who are not going to speak English as their first language. And that can be a really thrilling thing, also an intimidating thing at the same time. But I think all the students that we've had go on these programs have come back having really good experiences, and they've gone on to do really interesting things. Some have gone on to the Foreign Service. We have 2 alumni. One is currently, I think, finishing up a tour in Cambodia before he moves on to his next station. The other is in Brazil, and he'll be going to Saudi Arabia for his next deployment in the State Department. And those were both students who came to UH who knew languages. They were already bilingual, and they became multilingual as well through their study of language here, through different programs that they had applied for. And I think that's a real benefit as students from UH. Most of our students come in maybe as heritage speakers of a different language and knowing English as well, and you should see that as a real asset for yourselves. Because in living in a diverse city like Houston, you're going to have to communicate with people whose first language is not English, probably regardless of which profession you choose. And that's something that I think our students have gone on to do even after they complete these programs. We have people who come back who do medical school, law school, professional school, private industry jobs where they're using another language. And I think the fact that they've participated on some of our fellowship programs makes them competitive for those things as well. So I want to be mindful of time, so I'll cede the floor.
Thanks. I just want to share 2 brief stories with you from my own career in the U.S. Foreign Service about how important it was to be multilingual. One is about a language that I actually speak, but I'll start with a story about a language I don't speak. So I was the public affairs counselor in New Delhi, and I was good friends with my colleague who was the public affairs counselor in Pakistan. And one day we were on the phone talking, and we were comparing notes between how a particular American policy had gone over in Indian public opinion and in Pakistani public opinion. And he said, you know, you should check something out because I'm very interested. What we're reading in the English language press is 180 degrees different than what we're reading in the Urdu language press. And so we checked it out and found that indeed what was in the Urdu language press in India was very different than the English language press, but also very different than what was in the Hindi press or the Marathi press or the Tamil press. And so we got together and sort of figured out how important it was for American policymakers and for our embassies in Islamabad and in New Delhi to understand that just because if you go in as an American and only read the English language newspapers and editorials, you'll have a very different opinion of what people think, a very different impression of what people think than if you read the language that actually the vast majority of people are reading in. And so we were able to put together a report and to get people to realize that really they should pay far more attention to what was in the local language media instead of what was in the English language media. The other story I wanted to share with you was that one of the greatest jobs that I had in the Foreign Service was actually not being ambassador, but was being the Arabic language spokesman for the US government. So during the George W. Bush administration, there was a realization that there was a huge conversation going on about US policy in the Middle East, as you can well imagine, but that this conversation was going on in Arabic. And we didn't have anybody that really followed or spoke enough Arabic to really be part of that conversation. And so I was plucked out of the Arabic language program and given some extra training and sent to Dubai to establish what we call the Arabic Media Language Hub. And my job for 3 years was to get on the air, get on the radio, get on the newspapers, get on the television, whenever they needed me in Arabic or French or English, but mostly in Arabic, to be part of that conversation. And the best sort of review I ever got was a good friend's wife who watched me and who said, well, I still don't like American policy in the Middle East, but at least I'm not going to break the television. So he said he owed me a TV because I had saved his television from being broken by his angry wife. But the point was to have a diplomat, to have anybody representing any other institution, be able to speak to your local audience in the local language, culturally sensitive, linguistically sensitive, contextually sensitive, is super important, not just for diplomats, but for a business, for a university, for anyone that's representing anything overseas, to be able to respect the culture that you're engaging with enough to do that in their language is super, super important and is indeed a secret superpower, I think. So I just thought those were two relevant stories to share with you. And again, in the interest of time, I know that both Daniel and Ben are very much available, not just today, but online and in person as well. And so I just stop here by asking each of them to share how best our students and faculty can get in touch with you if people are interested in following up either with US government, potential careers, or with following up on some of these opportunities that our students might have.
So for me, thank you very much, Ambassador. I think those are great stories, and I think they really sell it, and they send it home. For me, if you want to get in touch, the State Department's website for jobs, for internships, I'll just flag. We offer 10-week paid internships. We fly you to Washington, D.C. We treat you like a diplomat for about 10 weeks, and we put you to work, and we cover your housing, and you get paid. They open today, and they'll be open for the next 7 days. But if you want to learn more, go to careers.state.gov. That's careers.state.gov. You'll see a big button there that says connect with a diplomat, and I'm there for Texas, and you can follow up with me there on LinkedIn, via email, but all my information is there. And there's a lot of really good opportunities to translate this multilingual experience, internships like the one at the Department of State, programs like the ones that Ben are talking about, into actual careers in federal service. And that's another thing to keep in the back of your mind. There are multiple language programs like the CLS and the Boren that are not just to help you develop language, but to bring those skills to your government, and you get accelerated access to federal jobs through those programs. And so something to keep in mind. Anyway.
If you want to get in touch with our office, whether you're interested in national fellowships like CLS, Boren, Fulbright, and others, or if you're interested in undergraduate research, you can reach out to us at undergrad-research@uh.edu. We also have a pretty robust social media page that I do not manage because I don't have social media, but it's very up-to-date and very current. Those are probably the best ways to get in touch with us. And I also just want to make the point that our office works with the entire campus community. So you do not have to be an Honors College student if you want to apply for our programs or work with us. We are physically housed in the Honors College, but we work with actually more students who are non-honors than honors students. So we really are open to anybody.
All right. Thank you very much.
Let's go ahead and transition to our last panel, where we're going to talk about translation itself as a career in two different fields. So let me welcome to the stage Dean Catherine Tart from the Gessner College of Nursing and Gabriela Baeza from Arte Publico Press.
Hi, my name is Catherine Tart. I'm the founding dean for the Andy and Barbara Gessner College of Nursing. I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for quite some time, and I'm delighted to be here to show you and talk to you about multilingualism and also interpretation within the healthcare field. Extremely important.
Hi everyone, buenas tardes. My name is Gabriela Baeza Ventura. I am faculty here in the Department of Hispanic Studies, and I'm also executive or deputy director at Arte Publico Press. And in a professional translator, I grew up speaking Spanish, and that became my career as part of my work, not only as a professor of Spanish, but also translator from English to Spanish.
Thank you. So Dean Tart, I understand you have a presentation for us. So
A little bit,
yes.
based on your questions. So
Yes.
if you want to.
And so Dean Tart's going to share what do careers in translation and interpretation look like in the nursing industry and in the healthcare industry.
In the healthcare industry specifically. And I'm really excited to see all of you here because I feel like when we look at our student population, when we look at our population in Texas, we know that there is a lot going on with multiculturalism and multilingualism. So the next slide shows you just from 2015. That's the closest I could get, but you can imagine that was, 10 years ago. So over 8 million people in Texas speak Spanish. Over 6 million or speak another language besides English. Over 6 million, almost 7 million speak Spanish. 500,000 Asian or a Pacific Island language. You can see them here. Arabic, Indo-European languages, and African languages. So you know those numbers are woefully backwards, but that's what's available for us to look at when we talk about a multilingualism just within our state. I want to get a little closer to home and show you the next slide, and this is Fort Bend County just next door to Harris County. So Fort Bend is the 5th most diverse county in the United States. Wow. It's here. And we're very fortunate, and this is out of U.S. News and World Report from 2021, and we're very fortunate that in our nursing program, we live in Sugar Land, which is right in the middle of Fort Bend. So our students look exactly like our county and around Texas. So I want to bring it home a little closer to some of the health careers for translation and interpretation just here in the Texas Medical Center and in the greater Houston area. So for example, Texas Children's Hospital, these are the services right here at Texas Children's that are provided with Arabic, Mandarin, and Spanish services. They need people in business development. They need intake coordinators, financial counselors. So you don't even have to necessarily say, I want to be in healthcare as a nurse, perhaps, or as a physician or a physical therapist. I'm a financial person, and that's what I want to do. But they need help with those folks just at Texas Children's Hospital. Administrative assistants and, of course, physicians, nurses. Of course, that's a big thing for me. And, there are 300,000 nurses in the state of Texas. And so we need to look like the populations that we serve. There are interpreters 24/7, and I have the email here, so if you want a job, if you want an internship with Texas Children's, you can do that. You can do that right while you're going to school. So I speak Norwegian fluently. I was an international exchange student, and I've been a nurse in Norway. And I know what it's like to have somebody speak the language to you when you are in a very vulnerable situation, and it can mean the world. The map above is all the places, all the languages that come to Texas Children's Hospital specifically. That's the world. So do you have a place in healthcare? Yeah. You don't have to be a physician, you don't have to be a nurse, you can have a job in healthcare. So how do you get the experience? That's my next slide. Talk to your family about your history. Where did you come from? That's what I did. When our families immigrated to the United States, they were not allowed to speak German or Norwegian anymore, right? So I had to ask, what did our family speak? And I learned that we spoke Norwegian. So I took a college class. I went to Norway. I decided to live and go to school there, and that's what I did, because I wanted to learn another language. And that's one of the reasons I love the University of Houston, because we have these languages for you to study. Hang out with other people besides those who speak your own language. Just really get immersed into that culture, because you want to be able to be understood in the culture that you are now living in. When I was a nurse in Norway, they thought I was Icelandic because I have a little bit of an accent. I said, no, that's just my Texas accent when I am speaking Norwegian. So it does work. Norway has two national languages, New Norwegian and what they call Bokmål, and there are over 400 dialects in that country of 5 million people. So you just think about the impact that language has. Attend conferences like you're doing today, go to health fairs, do civic events, go to chambers of commerce, go into professional groups. These are all areas where you can learn about other cultures and other languages. Cook different ethnic foods. I say you can become poor just going to a restaurant every day for a year, and you'll go to a different restaurant every single day in this city. One of our people, I wanted to know, what do we do within our own nursing program? And of 25 of us that teach and our staff there, we speak 18 different languages just in the College of Nursing on our staff side and our faculty side. So those languages are Spanish, Filipino, French, Malaysian, Hindi, Arabic, Punjabi, Farsi, and me, Norwegian. So volunteer, do the things that your panelists have talked to you about. Go, experience, get a job. Even get a job if you're not a good English speaker at a restaurant or something of that nature, because it will force you to speak the languages, and that's where you want to learn. So let me give you some resources for language skills, and I'm going to go to our hospitals because our hospitals are just full. All you have to do is, like for Methodist Hospital, they have patient support services and language assistance where they have liaisons that speak the languages that you might need to speak. Services for international patients, advisory services, global healthcare networks, where they help other hospitals build up programs within their countries, but they need people to speak those languages. There's global education and training for physicians and nurses and healthcare providers. There's programs for the professions. Memorial Hermann also has international services. They have services specifically for Spanish, and they have clinical exchange programs specifically for their physicians. Texas Children's Hospital, again, education and training, cultural complexities and sensitivities, and that 24/7 language interpretation. So, honestly, if you really want to learn to be culturally competent, the best way to do that is to learn that other language. And that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that we're reaching out. And we have some great stories just at our own nurse-managed clinic where we care for those people who are experiencing homelessness with our folks from optometry, from our dental van, and also from our law center, and also our medicine and our social work groups. So, yeah, there's a lot to learn. You can do it right here. You don't have to necessarily go to another country, but that's where you'll get really immersed in that country. If you don't feel like you can do that, go to the markets, go grocery shopping, go to the places of worship. Go and learn, because these are all places that will open their arms to you and teach you because they're so excited about what they have to offer. So that's what we do in nursing and healthcare, and I hope you find your spot.
Yeah, thank you, Dean Tart. That was wonderful. And so, Gabrielle, it's time to clap for you now. And so, Gabriella, I would love for you to share, what is translation and interpretation? What do those look like in your field?
So I also had a PowerPoint that I wanted to share with you. And I'm speaking very specifically from the field of translation and publishing for U.S. Latinos in the United States. And I wanted to start with this quote from Gloria Saldúa from Borderlands. If you go to the next slide, please. It says, "So if you want to really hurt me, talk badly about my language. Ethnic identity is twin-skin to linguistic identity. I am my language. Until I can take pride in my language, I cannot take pride in myself. Until I can accept as legitimate Chicano, Texas Spanish, Tex-Mex, and all the other languages I speak, I cannot accept the legitimacy of myself. Until I am free to write bilingually and to switch codes without having always to translate, while I still have to speak English or Spanish when I would rather speak Spanglish. And as long as I have to accommodate the English speakers rather than having them accommodate me, my tongue will be illegitimate." And so if we jump to the next slides, I want to speak of language and the skills that we bring to the table as critical skills when we are producing materials for a larger audience, right? And so every time that we publish something, and so I give you the example of Arte Público Press because this press starts off as a magazine that is bringing together two communities, Chicanos and New Yorkers from both sides of the U.S. in a physical space where they can meet, creatively and begin to produce literature written by Latinos in the United States for and by a community that was being erased, that was being negated a space in a country in which they fully participated, right? And the magazine was actually started in 1973. In 1980, and if you can jump to the next slide, it becomes Arte Público Press. And this is a publishing house that exists here at the University of Houston. It's founded and directed by Dr. Nicolás Canelos. And the importance of valuing and identifying language, and I'm very happy to see how many of the speakers who are participating in the contest today are particularly speaking from the lived experience of language. What does it mean to be of a specific language and to speak it and to practice it? Oftentimes we only think of language as a skill that is used to exchange goods, but rather it is a skill that can validate our identities. It validates us culturally. It validates our lives, right? And as we validate ourselves, we also validate others, as Dean Tart is mentioning, right? When we are offering a service to somebody that feels seen, right? That it feels identified in the work that we're doing, that's extremely valuable. So I have maybe the next slide, if you could point it out. Pull it up, please. One of the imprints that Arte Público Press created was extremely important, was an imprint for children's books. Because for a long time, Latino children in the U.S. Were growing up without being reflected in the literature that they were reading in their classrooms. And this was extremely important in the fact that their identities as people who are part of a United States that oftentimes it only expects you to be one very specific way, and that's like, American, and that means something very specific and very stereotypical. When these Latino children were growing up, not seeing themselves reflected in the literature that they were reading, oftentimes they felt inadequate, right? They felt that they didn't belong. They felt that their language was not valuable. And so Arte Público Press launched Piñata Books, which is an imprint to produce bilingual books for children and young adults. If you see the one on one of the first books that we published was Pepita Talks Twice, which is the story of a little girl who is a translator for her family, which is one of the stories that many of us as immigrants, right, can identify with. So one day she decides that she's not going to speak twice, that she's only going to speak one language, and she chooses English. So she immediately realizes that she can't eat the traditional food at home because she can't pronounce it, right? She can't eat enchiladas or tacos. She has to come up with something creative for it. But in a very important way, she soon realizes that being bilingual is a superpower. This book comes out in the 90s when being bilingual was being seen as something very, very negative. We have another book listed on there, which is Renee Has Two Last Names, and this is published in 2000. And this book talks about the experience of a Salvadorian American who says who begins to take ownership of his identity and saying, I don't want to lose the two last names that I come with when I come to the U.S., right? And so in the book, it shows the child, right, a small child having to, in a school system, trying to figure out which of the two last names he's going to keep, right? And so we burden our immigrant communities or our Latino communities or our foreign communities to make that decision, right? If I invisibilize my maternal history, I'm erasing a whole part of my life, right? So what I'm coming here to tell you is that there are so many important skills. If you just jump to the very last slide, please. Being bilingual, the very, very last one. Yeah, we're almost there. I put a lot. I'm very greedy. Okay, so right there, the previous one, where it says multilingualism is a plus.
Go one
the
back.
previous one. Thank you. And I'm sorry, it's very wordy, but multilingualism is a plus because obviously it opens up your career choices, right? But also if you're in the field of publishing or in the field of doing of anything that's written and it's public facing, you already have the opportunity to think from another perspective, right? Understanding that as we create and print spaces, put anything into print or even in illustrations where we begin to reflect the lived experiences of others, already is allowing us to open up those spaces for those other communities, but not only for those other communities that we are representing, but for all those other communities which we cannot yet see. And that's extremely important because there are many more opportunities, many more other languages that we can identify. And one of our colleagues earlier said that there are approximately 7,000 languages spoken, 700 languages. There surely are a lot more than that I'm sure would be made visible as soon as we begin to publish a lot of these books, because then we will begin hopefully people will start to speak up and say, hey, I'm not represented. And so in the field of publishing, you can be an editor, you can be an author, you can be a publisher, you can be an editor who, like me, is always, hopefully you'll be conscious as you're working with writers to not erase the way they are trying to portray their characters, the way the voices are being written, the way those characters are being written about. There's that sensibility that you begin to develop, and I'll share more opportunities to putting these things into practice if you'd like.
Thank you so much, Gabriela. That was so beautifully stated. Can we please thank Dean Tart and Gabriela for that? I'm so glad that we got to end on this really beautiful note of joy of sharing each of our unique parts of our languages and cultures. I want to thank everyone for coming today. And as our judges are going to take a few minutes to step to the side and pick a winner, I'd invite y'all to grab some lunch and to meet our panelists in the back to speak with Masterworld, Career Services, and all of our panelists in the back. And then I will come back up in a few minutes to announce the winners of our Voices of Success competition. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm excited to announce the top 3 winners of the Voices of Success competition. In third place, receiving a $25 gift certificate, is Hannah Garia. Let's give her a hand. Hannah, she was here a second ago. I think she had, oh, here we go. Okay, great. I don't have it with me, but we'll get it to you. In second place is Maggie Nyo. Maggie, second place. And in first place is Edgar Castillo. Thank you, everybody, for participating, and I hope you enjoy your food and chat and conversations.